Welcome to the Yoga Entrepreneurship School podcast, or as I like to call it, the Yes Podcast. My name is Britta Moreta, your podcast host with over a decade of experience working as a yoga teacher and business consultant all over the world. The Yes Podcast is for people in the wellness industry who are here to say yes to their dreams, their businesses, and their bank accounts, all while teaching what they love long term. The Yes Podcast is sponsored by Bridal Babes Yoga, a luxe start to your celebration. Ready to elevate your bachelorette or hen-do weekend with something truly unforgettable? My Bridal Babes Yoga experiences are crafted with intention, movement, and connection because you deserve more than just the usual. Immerse yourself in a soulful, joy-filled session designed exclusively for you and your crew. Whether you crave a restorative morning flow, a themed class with playful energy, or a heart-centered practice to set powerful intentions for this next chapter, we'll curate a dreamy experience that feels as radiant and one-of-a-kind as your love story. What to expect? Thoughtfully curated playlist, essential oil-infused head massage, a pause to breathe, move, laugh, and connect with the optional add-ons of tarot card reading, astrology chart reading, and friendship bracelet making. This isn't just a yoga class. It's a radiant start to your weekend, an unforgettable moment of luxurious relaxation and joy before the confetti. Let's make magic for your bridal crew. To book a Bridal Babes yoga class, you can go to brittamoreta.com/bridal-babes-yoga or find our link in the show notes. Welcome to Yoga Entrepreneurship School. My name is Britta Moreta, and today's podcast episode is a different one. It is for women who have experienced miscarriage while running a business, while running a wellness business. So if this episode is not for you, for a multitude of reasons, you don't have to listen. But for those of us who are in need of healing, are in need of sisterhood, are in need of yoga through community on and off of our mat, and maybe you need some resources around this topic, then this podcast episode is for you. And this podcast episode is dedicated to one, if not the only soul sister in my life who has experienced what we're discussing in this podcast for too many times. This is for her. And for every woman who has experienced this or has witnessed someone else experience miscarriage. I have kept my miscarriage a very private experience. And I don't have to explain why. It's just what I needed to do to heal myself. And I don't know if we ever fully heal from miscarriage. I think it just takes time to heal our bodies and then feel the grief that goes along with it. At least that was the order that I experienced it in. We are going to dive deep into what a miscarriage can look like for a woman. We are going to dive deep into what owning a yoga studio can look like while experiencing miscarriage and experiencing deep trauma in the body. And this is the second time I've recorded this episode because the first one was very unhinged. And I don't want that to go out into the world because I'm a yoga teacher who holds space for women. And I don't want this to be an unsafe space for people. I wanted it to be a very safe space. So the first episode that is not going out was for me. And now this episode is for us. I'm going to take you down a rabbit hole, and I hope that you will hold on. I hope that you will flow through this journey with me. 13 months ago, I had a miscarriage. 13 months ago, I did not know I was pregnant. 13 months ago, I was in a very manipulative relationship with a man in Portugal. Portugal was not an easy time for me in any capacity, even though I chose that journey, I chose that destination, I chose everything that happened, and I take full responsibility for that. I do not take responsibility for some of the things I experienced that were completely out of my control due to the behavior of others. So, before my miscarriage even happened, a little backstory on my Portugal journey. I'm Portuguese and American. I am just as Portuguese as everyone who is Portuguese in my family. My grandfather comes from Mozambique. Our family is Portuguese from Goa. They went over to Mozambique. That's where my grandmother, who helped raise me, she was a traveling teacher for girls. I'm a traveling yoga teacher. So that got passed down in the family. And she met my Portuguese grandfather in Mozambique, and they got married, had many kids, went over to Portugal, and then they went over to America. And that's where I come in. And my grandmother was the first person who took me on a plane, so that travel bug started very young. And I have tried to become legally Portuguese, even though I'm Portuguese by blood, many, many times. I tried getting my citizenship through my grandfather. I was denied. I tried getting multiple visas. I was denied. And then I just said, fuck this. And I showed up to Portugal with 3 days left on my passport. And I very much fought the government on getting my residency. And although I did not get my residency until I chose to surrender and leave Portugal, so if you have never been through a bureaucratic system before or abroad, it's a living hell. It is like throwing yourself in a fire over and over again on purpose, just so you can become the person you always were. So that was my Portuguese journey that I experienced for many, many years. And then I opened a yoga studio in Portugal, and my studio is like the one thing I'm incredibly proud of, to the point that it makes me cry, because I have managed many yoga studios. I have helped other people open studios, but this one was mine. And I'm so proud of it. It was called the Yoga Hostel. It was a yoga studio for everyday women. It was a yoga studio for women who are healing from injuries. It was a yoga studio for women to come together in sisterhood and meet new people through each other. And I had the studio for about 2 years. Um, and the last 6 months were going so well that I didn't even have to advertise it as much, because women were just showing up for the studio and for each other and themselves. And this miscarriage was experienced the last 6 months of my yoga studio. So last May, actually last April, I was dating someone who got me pregnant without my consent, like 100% without my consent. And although I did everything to prevent myself from getting pregnant, when that happened, it didn't work. And I did not know I was pregnant. I assumed it would happen, even though I did what I could to prevent that. And I had no symptoms of pregnancy besides being incredibly moody, but I also just thought that was lack of sleep due to running a yoga studio and an online business at the same time, while dealing with a bureaucratic process and a boyfriend who sucked. So I did not relate that to being pregnant. But one night in my studio, when I had students there, we had weekly Portuguese classes. For people who needed to learn Portuguese. So I was taking the Portuguese class with some of my students, and my body quite literally exploded with blood. Um, my students did not know, no one in that studio knew it was happening, because I was able to quietly exit myself from the room and run into the bathroom and then bleed out for 9 hours. I lost 1 kilo of blood. I got very, very sick. Um, and I was somehow like able to, like, they finished the class, the Portuguese class. I was able to like tell them goodbye and then like immediately run back to the bathroom again and continue bleeding that whole night, the whole morning. And I remember like texting and calling my family in the middle of the night being like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. Like, I'm losing so much blood. I'm miscarrying right now. I did not know I was pregnant. And I was also like at this time, I'm Portuguese, like I said before, and there's a lot of cultural things happening in Portugal. And luckily, I have a very beautiful family who loves and adores me in Portugal. They're not only my family, they are my best friends. And my family like really showed up for me. Like this happened 13 months ago, and to this day, my family is texting me every day just to remind me of how amazing I am, to remind me how much they love me, and to remind me like how much they are here for me. So my family really showed up for me that night. I did not go to the hospital, quite honestly. Um, the healthcare system in Portugal is very fucked. I had health insurance, but you could be on your deathbed in Portugal and they won't give you antibiotics. They'll give you ibuprofen. They're very anti-vax in Portugal. I don't really care what anyone's opinion is on that. But at the end of the day, when you're having a health emergency, Portugal is just not the place to be. So I didn't go to the hospital. And honestly, I think it was just because I was just such in a shock as to what I was experiencing. My brain didn't even think that I'm like, I should go to the hospital right now. I was just like sitting on a floor bleeding out, like taking it breath by breath, moment by moment. And I text one of my really good friends who lived in the Algarve because she's a mom. And I figured someone who knew about natural birthing might be able to just like hold space for me. So I reached out to my family, I reached out to her, and I somehow miraculously made it through that night. The bleeding started around 7 p.m. It did not stop until 9 a.m. the next day. Um, that next day, my best friend and her husband arrived for a Taylor Swift concert. We had been, our girl Taylor was in Lisbon to do what Taylor Swift does, the Eras tour. And I remember telling myself, like, no matter what happens, I worked so hard to make that concert happen and another one that I'm like, even if I'm on my deathbed, I will wrap myself up and I will go to the Taylor Swift concert. I'm a full fan. Like, I call myself a Taylor Swift expert if you don't know me, because I grew up with Taylor Swift music since I was 12 years old. So my best friend Abby and I, the bleeding stopped and they were there for the concert and I was there for the concert, and I'm like, we are going to this concert. And my body was able to chill out for a few days, and we went to the concert. We had a really good time, and I just thought that that was the end of my miscarriage. And then 2 weeks later, I had more tickets to another Taylor Swift concert in Scotland. I got standing front row tickets to the Eras tour in Scotland, and I invited my mom and a friend. And I thought nothing of it. I thought it was going to be all good. And then 2.5 days before that concert, I was still in Portugal. The bleeding started again. And this time it was very painful. I was very, very sick. And I did not know if I could even get on a plane at that point. But 2 weeks before that, at the first concert, the guy who I was dating broke up with me. The weekend of a Taylor Swift concert, which is like the one weekend you don't ruin for a woman. So, as much as I love that concert, I got to spend it with my best friend. That was also just a very emotionally hard weekend for me. So, this was like my redemption concert. I'm like, this concert is for me and my mom. Like, I've worked so hard to make these tickets happen, this trip happen. We are going to this concert. And I was, like I said, I was so sick. I literally like wrapped myself up, took a bunch of ibuprofen to get the bleeding to slow down, and I hopped on a plane and I made it to Edinburgh. And I met my mom there. My mom knew it was happening, and like the moment we saw each other, we like hopped on the Taylor Swift tram that they had that weekend, which was so cool. And then we went to our Airbnb, and I basically laid in that bed for a majority of that weekend. I was in so much pain. I was bleeding so much. Um, and no one would know it besides my mom and my friend who was there. I didn't tell her what was happening, but she knew like a health emergency was happening. And yeah, I once again said, I made this weekend happen. I made this Taylor Swift concert happen for myself. I don't care that I feel like I'm on my deathbed right now. I am going to this concert. So took a bunch of ibuprofen, wrap myself up, put on my the smallest man who ever lived costume, very much needed for that weekend. And I went to the Eras tour and experienced a lot of healing there. Music is my medicine, as is movement. So that was a really good time for me. And then the moment the concert was over, I went right back home and continued bleeding and just laid in bed for most of that weekend. Um, I've never lost so much blood in my life. I was already low iron well before that, just because that runs in my family. So it was a very hard time on top of losing something that was growing inside of me, that I'm someone my whole life really just didn't want kids. I still don't know if I have the answer to that, if I want kids. I think I have opened my mind a little bit up to it because of this experience. Um, really grateful I did not have a child with that person. I think in some fucked up way, um, our bodies are a universe, and our bodies know what is for us and what is not. And that entire experience was not for me. That it quite literally exited my body without me even knowing it was growing in the first place. So I was dealing with a lot of health issues. The moment I landed back in Lisbon, I decided I needed to go to the hospital. And I go to the hospital on my own at first. And I had to go to the gynecology floor. And they had a white man, running the gynecology department for women who are having miscarriages. And I am just so sick of men who have never experienced things like this in their bodies. And I don't care how educated they are. I don't care. This is not sexist because I'm a woman saying this. Men should not be working in these departments. If you cannot physically experience a miscarriage, if you cannot physically experience childbirth, I'm all for men educating themselves. I'm all for men going to school to get degrees in this, but please let women and people who have experienced miscarriages and childbirth and all the things that go with it run these departments. It is going to be a much healthier experience for everyone involved. So I get there, and he proceeds to yell at me for 10 minutes, telling me how I should have been more careful, rather than asking, where is the man who got you pregnant? But because Portugal, regardless of how you feel about it, is a very patriarchal country, this is not an opinion, this is a fact. That is what went down in that gynecology department. And they did some blood tests, they gave me some painkillers, and prescribed me to drink bottles of iron for the foreseeable future. Yeah, so I got picked up by two of my good friends, thank God. One of them was Portuguese and was able to help with the communication after that god awful experience at that hospital. And they drove me home. And it started my 3-month journey of drinking iron bottles, which, by the way, if you've never drinking iron before, it really messes with your digestive system. And I started getting sick and bloated just from that. So I didn't know I wasn't supposed to drink it every day. You should only drink it every couple of days, but I didn't know and no one told me. But it's also our responsibility to know what we're putting in our bodies. So all of this was going down. This is a lot of trauma and a lot of craziness. All of this was happening while I was running a yoga studio at the same time and running my online business consultancy for wellness entrepreneurs, which I'm still doing now. And first of all, I just want to say that women can do it all. Even when we shouldn't, even when life is absolutely insane, women can do it all. And my saving grace throughout that entire experience, which, by the way, I continued bleeding for at least 3 months. My entire healing in Portugal, I didn't do much healing there, but it was my yoga studio, because I'm someone that when I'm going through hard life things, I can throw myself into work. And teaching yoga, I don't consider work. I consider it love. Love for my students, love for the practice, love for how we can so beautifully and rawly, I don't know if rawly is a word, but I just made it up, can move our bodies when we're going through hard things. And I am my best yoga teacher when I'm going through hard life things, because it makes me more human. And the more human we are, the more opportunities we have to connect with one another. And although the women in my studio did not know what I was experiencing, this was a very personal matter, emotionally, I was able to show up for them more and myself. And even though it was really hard to move my body, I'm someone who can teach with my words. So I don't really have to demo yoga poses if I don't have to, which really helped with the whole teaching yoga thing. But it also helped me better hold space for women who were experiencing injuries, women who are experiencing breakups, women who are experiencing the bureaucratic system in Portugal and the ungroundedness that comes with that. And that studio continued growing throughout the summer. I also, because I got so sick from my miscarriage, I had laryngitis for almost 3 months. So my miscarriage hit, and that was, I think, like May 27th is when that happened. I got laryngitis by mid-June. And I had laryngitis until maybe beginning of September. No, until end of September, because I had to shut the studio down for the month of October because I was so sick. And I just needed time off. So I taught yoga that whole summer. I also hosted poetry readings for women, and poetry was my medicine. I will actually share my poetry channel in the show notes today. It's something that really helped me heal, to be able to write my pain and then share it with the world. And I invited women to my studio for all of us to do that. And that was the first time I ever spoke out loud about what I had experienced. And poetry is something that heals me to this day. I write when my heart feels open. So miscarriage, laryngitis for many months, and running a yoga studio at the same time. Wow, that's a lot. I'm sharing this podcast episode not to tell you to go own, run, and teach at a yoga studio when your body's going through hell. I am sharing it to provide perspective of what women do while bleeding. I almost died last year because I lost so much blood. Like, that's the truth. And somehow yoga showed up for me, and I showed up for yoga. And whether yoga is asana for you, so moving through postures and breath, whether it's sitting in meditation, or whether it's studying the history of yoga and the deities, or taking your yoga off the mat to be of service to the world, that is yoga. And I want you to know that this practice, whether it's your practice or your business or both, can show up for you with a community that backs it to help you heal, whether they know that you're in need of healing or not. My studio was my joy, was my love, was the one thing that kept me alive in those moments where my body quite literally was dying. I would wake up every day and my body felt like it was decaying. My arms felt like death. And that is the only way I can describe it, is my arms, every morning I would wake up and they just feel like they had died. So it's like I was in this, my soul was alive in a very sad way, but my body was very much going through a death, and it did. It released something that did not make it inside of me. And I don't want to say I'm grateful for that experience. I also really want to emphasize how many people say stupid things, spiritually bypassing stupid things like everything happens for a reason, or trust the process, or wow, you are just learning a really hard life lesson right now. What a life lesson this is for you. These kind of people should just be banned from the planet and be actually forced to sit in silence with their disgusting thoughts, because saying that to someone who is going through miscarriage or any type of grief or death is the most disgusting, unaware, spiritually bypassing thing you can ever say to someone. So if you're someone who posts things like trust the process, I also just want to share where trust the process came from. It came from Bikram, who is a known rapist in the yoga industry. And that's a whole other podcast episode that I will absolutely share about, as that was part of my journey too, a long time ago. Don't say things like trust the process, because a rapist said that while he was raping women, aka his yoga students and teachers. Okay? How about we say, I trust myself? Because the patriarchy teaches us not to. So how about we get on our yoga mats, fight the patriarchy, and say things like, I trust myself, and begin practicing what it looks and feels like to trust ourselves versus this process. Okay? So yoga, running a yoga studio, going through your bureaucratic process, miscarriage, all at the same time. Let the yoga hold you. Let it guide you. Let it allow it for the community to show up for you, whether they know what's happening or not. Because my students, whether they know it or not, absolutely saved me in that experience. By them showing up for themselves, by them so graciously sharing their yoga practice with me, because I was just the teacher. And even though like the teacher's technically in charge, the students are their best teachers. So to be able to witness their practice and their healing healed something inside of me too. So to all the students who practiced with me last year and the year before as well, thank you for showing up for yourselves, because it was one of the most beautiful things that ever happened to me. I ran that studio, like I said, until October. I was so sick by October that I closed the studio for the month. And I got a beautiful apartment in the Algarve and laid on a beach for 3.5 weeks, watched TV, drank water, ate really nourishing food. And that is what I did for 3.5 weeks, finally taking time off, not in charge of a studio, not moving my body, like truly resting my body. Instead, I brought my cat Matcha with me. She's a traveling cat. We travel everywhere together. So my cat and I took a little holiday in the Algarve. And 6 months prior to this, my favorite musician outside of Taylor Swift, his name is Nako Bear, announced that he was going to be in London for a weekend performing. And I love Nako. I had not seen him perform until pre-pandemic. So I think it was like in April for my birthday gift to myself, I booked a ticket to London and I got a ticket to his concert. Not really thinking anything of it, just super excited to listen to the medicine music. And I went to London for my last 3 days off in October. And wow, London felt like an exhale. London felt like myself. London felt like ambition in motion. London felt like my 18-year-old self in New York City who is trying to make it on Broadway. London felt really good. So I returned back to Portugal from London, and I immediately broke my lease, not even knowing if I was going to move to London, but knowing that Portugal was no longer it for me. And it really was never it for me. The whole experience was not that great for the many years I was there. So yeah, and it happened with such ease. My landlords were fine with it. I shut down the studio December 31st. We had one last gathering, a big New Year's party. I went dancing with my cousin Bia, and then I hopped on a plane and moved to London on January 1st without any sleep from the night before. Because if you're gonna leave Portugal, you're gonna leave it with a party. And my journey of London began. And I had no idea. Everyone keeps asking me this year, why did you move to London? Why did you move to Paris, which is where I'm currently at? 2025 has been the year of following my heart and listening to my body and what is best for it. So I moved to London because it just fell in my lap. And even before I moved to London, I kept getting invited back to go to London. One of my dear friends had a birthday party in London in November, so I went back. And then I had met someone, so I returned right before Christmas as well. And by November, my second trip there, just the yoga was so good in London and everything just felt like ease. I found an apartment and I was like, I'm just going to do it. And then I came back once more in December and just locked it all in, moved there. And I got a flat right next to Hampstead Heath. And if you haven't been to London, or even if you have, Hampstead Heath is like the grandmother of London. It is the Mama Earth of London. And as someone whose entire chart is an Earth besides my moon, it was the most healing experience of my entire life. And I'm saying that as someone who has like traveled the world and taught yoga in 20 countries. Hampstead Heath, top of the list. Like if you're going to go anywhere in the world, you go to Hampstead Heath. So every day, even multiple times a day, I would spend hours walking through Hampstead Heath, laying in the grass, crying, hiking, smiling, laughing, feeling all the joy. I would even like teach private clients yoga at Hampstead Heath because there were places to do that. And Hampstead Heath just became this home for me, this home of healing, and this beautiful, like, deep divinity of a lesson that nature comes in seasons, that everything is cyclical and nothing is permanent, and that if we just allow the earth to hold us, she will. And it was the first time in my life where I wasn't teaching yoga full time. And I have no shame in saying that because it is not right that yoga teachers have to teach like 20 to 30 classes a week just to make like under $1,000 a week. Like that is unacceptable. And if you're a yoga student listening to this, please advocate for your teachers at studios. Like ask them, like, what are you paying your teachers? As you're charging like 30 pounds per person to take a class, what are you paying your teachers? Because teachers should not have to teach that much to make ends meet. Teachers should be paid in abundance. They should have health care, all these things. And I, for the first time, wasn't teaching full time in my entire like 13-year career of teaching yoga. I got to teach yoga maybe 4 times a month at this lovely, sustainable and accessible yoga studio owned by a French woman who is actually going to be on this podcast because she's amazing. And I would take yoga classes at her sustainable store / yoga studio and then just occasionally sub there. And I was so okay with that because for once I was not in charge. For once I could be the yoga student and just allow my body to move in ways that filled me and that healed me and where I could just authentically show up as me. And that yoga studio and Hampstead Heath, all in the same neighborhood, were my life in London. I didn't work that much, which was very hard because London is a very expensive city. And at the same time, my feet were very much not on the ground because I just needed to rest. I just needed a place where no one knew me because as a yoga studio owner in Portugal, I would like go outside and like 10 people would know me and I just couldn't like have privacy there. And that was my choice because I was a yoga studio owner. I was like a public figure in a way. So being in London where barely anyone knew me was such a blessing because I could just heal as an anonymous person. And one of my best friends from Lisbon ended up moving. She was actually my first yoga student and client in Portugal. She moved on the same street that I lived in London, just on the other side of it. So we got to spend a lot of time together in London. And then I met a few other people who just became my very close community there. And I promised myself that in 2025, and I even made like my mindset coach promise that we would not talk about my miscarriage. I'm like, I'm over it. I'm in a new location. I am not going to talk about this because this journey is left in Portugal. This chapter is closed. And for 6 months, I did not think about my miscarriage. For 6 months, I did not talk about it. That miscarriage was in the past. It no longer represented me. It no longer was a part of me, which was not the truth at all. But for those 6 months, I got to live as someone who was not experiencing that. I just got to live as a normal person, which felt really, really good. So London was a grandmother for me. London was this place full of Scorpios, and I'm a Scorpio moon, and Scorpios are all about like going through the death and the rebirth. And London was very much a rebirth for me. I got to go to astrology school when I was in London. I told myself like my one goal if I move to London is that I'm going to astrology school. So I signed up for the London School of Astrology and every week and every other weekend I got to go to astrology school in a real school and I got to be a student. I got to be not in charge and I got to sit in a desk and ask questions and also sit in silence and learn and be amazed as to how much our astrological charts are pretty much the same as living in our Dharma if we choose to listen to ourselves and get to know who we are and be on our paths. And astrology school, I'm actually going back to London in the autumn to continue to get my diploma in astrology because it really, astrology has been something I've been studying since I was 18. So it's just something that has always guided my path. I've read astrology charts for myself, for my loved ones, even for my business, the yoga hostel in Portugal. Like it really helps me understand like how things work in life and how to spiritually navigate my path here on this planet. So to learn about the history of astrology and to learn how to read charts in real life versus what I learned on YouTube was excellent. And I had just so many opportunities to learn about people and to learn about historical figures and like public figures now and day-to-day people and like how astrology is living in our Dharma. And it was everything for me. I love astrology school. I'm so excited to return. I actually recently got my astrology chart read by one of my dear professors who is just amazing. And that entire experience of Portugal, of the miscarriage, of the laryngitis, was my Saturn return. And my Saturn return ended towards the end of my London journey. So it ended on May 25th. I left London on June 25th as I'm staying in Paris for the summer. And I'm so grateful that the end of my Saturn return was those 6 months in London. I'm so glad that my Saturn return ended on a positive, full of love note versus the trauma I had experienced previously. I'm so grateful that I practiced yoga for the entirety of my Saturn return, that I got to teach yoga for most of it too, and that our astrology is in alignment with our Dharma. And my Dharma is traveling the world and teaching yoga and business. Like this is quite literally in my astrological chart. Like this is what I'm put on this planet to do and to teach astrology as well. And even though this miscarriage like flipped my life over, transformed me, like put me through a very real death that my body is still recovering from. I don't want to say I'm grateful for the experience because I wouldn't wish what I experienced on anyone, and I don't really feel the sense of gratitude for it. What I am grateful for is the deep healing I experienced within myself, the deep healing I experienced within community, because we are not meant to heal alone. We are meant to heal together. And to my community in Portugal and London, who very much carried me through this, whether they knew it or not, thank you. Because the people, my family, my dear close friends, the few who knew about this, the ones who picked me up at the hospital, my students who showed up for me in the yoga studio, the ones who came to the poetry readings, and every person I met in London, thank you. Because whether you knew it or not, you helped me heal. And Hampstead Heath, if you haven't been there, please go. Please be held by the Mother Earth. This is the park where C.S. Lewis was inspired to write the Chronicles of Narnia. That's how magical it is. I don't really know where I'm going with this. I don't really know why I'm sharing this podcast episode on a podcast that's called Yoga Entrepreneurship School. What I do know is that women can do it bleeding. Women can run yoga studios while experiencing miscarriage, while being pregnant, while having children, and they can run empires of yoga studios with grace and the love that we are. So if you are someone who has experienced a miscarriage, if you are someone who is pregnant, if you are someone who wants to get pregnant, if you are someone who has had children and you want to open a yoga studio or some kind of wellness space, know that you can and that you don't have to do it while experiencing trauma. Because London taught me and really completely transformed my journey that now I know exactly what I want to do in this life. And my dream that astrologically should be happening next April around my birthday is to open a yoga studio that offers yoga, business, and astrology in an accessible way for everyday people in London. Because Portugal taught me that if I can run a little yoga studio with a beautiful community that I can open and run a yoga studio anywhere from a much bigger and longer perspective. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to London. I'm going to finish my diploma in astrology, which I'm really excited about. And then I'm going to go open my studio there. I don't know how it's all going to work out. I never really know how these things work. I know how to run the business side of it. I know how to teach the yoga. I'm a little bit traumatized from my bureaucratic experience in Portugal, but everyone I know in London who has been through that process, it's been much more organized and with ease. So I have a lot of faith in the universe that it will all work out. So I'm not grateful that that miscarriage happened. I am grateful that after all of that experience, I was placed right back on my path, ready to teach yoga, astrology, and business and make it accessible to everyday people, because that's what I'm put on this planet to be and do and teach. I also want to share before we close this podcast episode that if you're someone who has experienced miscarriage or health issues from it, or you live in a place in the world that doesn't have answers, there is, I forget the exact name of it, but there is I think it's the London Center for Miscarriages. And although I didn't go there, their website provided me with a lot of resources that helped me figure out how to heal my body, that helped me not feel so alone in my experience of it, that also provided the science, because this is like the one center in the world that actually invests in women's health, shout out, to figure out from a scientific and DNA and like bodily perspective why some women experience miscarriages much more than others, or just why our body does the things that it does when it miscarries. So if that could be helpful for you, I'm going to put that website in the show notes, because it opened up my healing, and it really like helped me take care of myself versus going to a gynecology department in Portugal that yelled at me for 10 minutes. This place in London is a safe place. It is a scientific place. It is a place of intelligence that dedicates its entire purpose to women and to helping them heal from miscarriages and help them have babies if that's what they want to do. So I'm going to put that in the show notes. Thank you to everyone who has listened to this. I hope this provided something, maybe perspective, maybe healing, maybe the knowing that, I'm going to cry now, like the knowing that you are not alone, because we live in this world where like the patriarchy just like hates on women, and to the point that like women's bodies can't even be like studied to figure out why we have miscarriages in the first place. So I hope that this provides community. And if you are someone who is experiencing this, I am not a doctor. I am community, and you can reach out. You can find me on Instagram. You can send me an email. I'll put all that in the show notes. Just know that you're not meant to heal alone. You're meant to heal together. I'm going to end this podcast episode like I end every yoga class that I teach, with a poem, because poetry is medicine. And this poem is a poem that I listened to and that I read almost every day to myself when I was experiencing what I did. This poem is called "I Have Been 1,000 Different Women" by Emery Hall. Make peace with all the women you once were. Lay flowers at their feet. Offer them incense and honey and forgiveness. Honor them and give them your silence. Listen. Bless them and let them be, for they are the bones of the temple you sit in now. For they are the rivers of wisdom leading you toward the sea. Take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Loving you, holding you, reminding you that you are deeply held in this world, in this life, and to go to Hampstead Heath if you're in London to be held by the Mother Earth. Okay, my friends, I will see you on our next podcast episode. Take care of yourselves, get on your yoga mats, and I'll see you soon. Bye. If you want your retreat, teacher training, studio, or wellness offering to be featured on the Yes Podcast, then send an email to britta@brittamareda.com to get the details, or check the show notes for our email. Thank you for listening to the Yoga Entrepreneurship School podcast. If making money teaching what you love sounds like something you want to do, then check out the show notes to find out ways we can work together. If you feel called to leave a review, then you can find me on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'll see you in our next episode, on our mats, breathing deep and saying yes to our yoga dreams, all while making bold business moves.